What do you think of when you hear the words professional poker player? Is it something like this?
Kicker. Wow, he snap calls pretty much. On the very last hand,
I'm the best! The best! Yes! The best!
Or maybe something like this one.
By 5 a.m., Harlan was down $500,000. He'd abandoned everything he knew about poker and was playing like a frat kid, swinging for a home run on every hand.
Down here, please.
Hey, bud.
Molly, please. Let's go.
Sign here for 100.
That's not surprising. Mainstream media and the way that people talk about the game of poker has led people to believe that it's all craziness and degeneracy. And while there is some of that, this is what a professional poker player looks like. Hi, my name is Hunter Call. I'm a student at San Diego State University. And over the past 2 years, part of the reason that I've been able to attend there and what has supported me financially through my school has been poker. I am a professional poker player. As I just mentioned, there's a stigma around the game of poker that makes it seem like a bunch of degeneracy and gambling. And while that stuff does exist in the poker world, it is not a big part of what it's like to be a professional poker player. When I first started playing the game of poker, my parents had a lot to say and were not happy about the idea of me gambling for a living. 2 years later, after I've introduced them to the game and explained the way that things work to them, they're fully supportive and fully into the idea of me pursuing it as a career. My goal in this video is to do the same to you. Introduce you to the game of poker, show you how the rules are played, and explain a little bit of strategy so that you understand it's not just gambling. And then I'll tell a little bit of my story and how I got here as a poker player. So, without further ado, let's teach you how to play some cards. We're going to start our lessons in the beginning with a street that we like to call pre-flop. Okay, let's start with what everyone at the poker table cares about, the money. Before cards are even dealt out, two designated players are supposed to put out a predetermined amount of money. These two players are referred to as the small and big blind. The small and big blind amounts can vary from table to table, and it's what determines what stakes of poker you're playing and how much money you're able to buy in for. The small blind and big blind rotate around the table after each hand, ensuring that everyone pays the same amount of money before the hands are dealt out. Everybody is dealt two cards face down that only they get to look at until the end of the hand. If you're dealt a hand that you don't really like or think has that much potential to win, then you can fold it, meaning you don't pay any money, but you stop playing for that round. Another option you have is if you're dealt a hand that you do like and you think has potential to win, you can raise, meaning put more money in the middle, and if your opponents want to continue to play, they have to match that amount of money. The third option is one that I'll only cover briefly because from a strategic standpoint, it's a very bad move. It's called limping. It's when you just match the big blind rather than raise or fold. Once everyone's played their turn and action has made its way back around to the big blind, he now has an action and he can either match the amount that it's been raised to if it has been raised, and if it hasn't been raised, then he has the option to raise it himself or check, meaning move on to post-flop. Post-flop is broken up into three different streets: the flop, the turn, and the river. The first one, being the flop, is when three cards come out, and there's a round of betting amongst the players that remain. Once it's a player's turn, he or she has the option to bet, meaning put an amount of money out that now players have to match if they'd like to continue, or check, which essentially means pass to the next player. If there has been an amount bet and it's up to a player, their options are now only to match that amount bet, raise that amount to a higher number, or to fold, meaning they're done playing the hand. On the turn, a fourth card comes out, and there's another round of betting amongst the players that still remain. Finally, on the river, a fifth card comes out, and there's a final round of betting. Any players that still remain in the hand, if there are any, turn over their cards, and whoever has the best combination of their 2 cards with the 5 community cards that have been placed on the table for everyone gets all the money in the middle. If you're interested, here are the poker hand rankings. When you're combining those 2 cards with the community cards, you're trying to make the best one of these. Now that we understand the rules, let's take a brief look at some of the poker strategy that pros today apply to their game. We're going to talk about pot odds, the granddaddy of all poker math equations. It seems complicated, but I promise you it's not. This is the equation for pot odds. This is an equation that poker players use post-flop, and essentially all you do is just plug in the numbers when you're in a situation. So let's say you're playing this guy, and he bets $50 into a $100 pot. And you're trying to figure out what you should do with a flush draw. A flush draw being when you have 2 cards of a suit and there are 2 cards of a suit on the board. Meaning, if one more card of that suit comes, then you will make a flush. Well, let's go ahead and use our buddy math to figure out what you're supposed to do. So if you plug in the numbers, the size of the call, or the amount that we have to match, in this case would be $50, because remember, our opponent bet $50 into a $100 pot. Now the size of the pot after you call, in this case, would be $200, because it was initially a $100 pot, his $50 bet went in, and we're looking for the size of the pot after you match his $50 bet. So $100 total dollars has gone in, making it a total pot of $200. So now we found the numbers we need and we can plug them in. Our equation comes down to $50 over $200, which in fraction form simplifies to 1 over 4, which equals 25%. What pot odds does is give us a percentage or equity requirement for how often we have to win this hand in order for calling in this situation to be considered profitable. Now that we know we have to win 25% of the time in order to be profitable in our decision, let's find out how often our flush draw is actually going to win. I'm going to give an important pre-note and note that there are 13 of each suit in a deck of cards. So what we're going to do is take the number of cards left in the deck that will give us the winning hand and multiply by 2. In this case, we know that there are 9 cards left in the deck that will give us the winning hand. We know this because there's a total of 13 of each suit, and we can account for 4 of those. We're holding 2 in our hand, and there are 2 on the board, leaving 9 total spades, or the cards of our suit that we need to make a flush, left in the deck. This tells us that we're going to hit our flush and win the hand about 18% of the time. We found out earlier that we have to win about 25% of the time in order to be profitable. So we'll fold because calling is not a profitable decision. So we went over how the game's played and the tip of the iceberg in terms of strategy that professionals are using in order to make sure that they profit money in the long term. It's become at least somewhat clear that this isn't a game of degeneracy and gambling and hoping that you hit a magic card. It's math. It's a game for nerds. And quite frankly, I'm a nerd. So one day when I was walking down the beach and I met some dudes that were playing beach games and they invited me to come back to their place to play a card game, I got extremely excited. And I said yes, even though I'd never played this game before in my life. When I arrived at their house, they told me the game in question was Texas Hold'em, the game of poker that I taught you today. I had never played before and had no idea what the rules were, but I pretended like I did because I wanted to fit in. Sitting in front of you over 3 years later, I can honestly say that that was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. The game of poker has given me experiences that never would have happened otherwise, allowed me to meet people and cross paths with people that I never in a million years would have met, and I can truly say that I have a job that every day I walk into and that I love to do. And most 23-year-olds can't say that. Not everybody has to be a professional poker player. It's definitely not for everyone, and there are challenges that I'm not bringing up right now in this video that are extremely mentally taxing and tough and can make the job something that is just not for the majority of society. But it is safe, and if done properly and bankroll management and math are taken into account, it can be a career choice for people that are interested in strategy games. I wanted to introduce this game to as many people as I possibly could because it's made me extremely happy. I hope that I was able to give you at least a solid introduction into what this game is so that maybe it can make you happy too. Thanks for listening. Good luck at the tables, and if you see me there, go somewhere else.